Everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and here we are this morning celebrating, loving, living. Let's stand up and start the celebration by singing together. And so it is, and so we allow it to be. As we breathe, as we become even more still, as we open our hearts to listen to the words of our sacred reading.
A prayer for Independence Day. May we as a nation be guided by the divine to rediscover the sacred flame of our national heritage, which so many have given their lives to safeguard. Let the wounds of separation and division be healed by opening our hearts to listen to the truth on all sides, allowing us to find a higher truth that includes us all. May we learn to honor and enjoy our diversity and differences as a people, even as we more deeply touch our fundamental unity. May we as a people undergo a transformation that will draw forth individuals to lead our nation who embody courage, compassion, and hold to a higher vision. May our leaders inspire us, and we so inspire each other with our potential as individuals and as a nation, that a new spirit of forgiveness, caring, and honesty be born in our nation. May we as a united people move with clear, directed purpose to take our place within the community of nations to help build a better future for all humankind. May we as a nation rededicate ourselves to truly living as one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And knowing that there is only one nation, the nation of humankind, of matter, of spirit become matter, let us recognize and remember that this is the I Am presence. This is the I Am presence, and we are a drop in that ocean of I Am. And so we sing together, and as we sing, I am remembering who I am. Let us know the spiritual truth about ourselves, that we are the life of God and know it for all beings everywhere. I am remembering. I am remembering. Let us breathe into the wholeness of this moment, breathing in deeply. And then exhaling, gently opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
Good morning. I was 4 inches shorter when I got to rehearsal this morning. All right, here we go. It's nice to meet you this morning. I'm Denise Rosier, and when I wrote this first song, I was actually waiting for my dinner to be microwaved, and so I was playing around on the keyboard, and there was a lot of news at the time. Bono was doing this and that, and the Kardashians were doing this and that, and I thought, gosh, actually, it really doesn't take any of us to be an elected official or a celebrity or anything to move goodness and peace and love out into the world. All of us do it all the time. We do it on Sunday mornings from the pulpit. We do it in our classrooms. Some of us do it from our offices, and some of us do it even just from the dinner table every evening with our families. So all of us as individuals, we have and we are everything that we need to move love and peace out into the world. I am one, simple and plain, no superpowers, no famous name, but I stand tall, 'cause I believe something greater has come alive inside of me. And I have felt the Spirit stirring in my soul. Deep in my soul, I will give love, I will speak peace, all because of the love that's got a hold of me. So wide open, so amazing, it takes my breath away when it occurs to me. In a world where so many feel lost, I know God. I am one, but I'm not alone. When I'm with you, I am home. Side by side, we find the truth. When the Spirit in me meets the same in you, and I have felt the fire burning in my soul. Deep in my soul, I will give love, I will speak peace, all because of the love that's got a hold of me. So wide open, so amazing, it takes my breath away when it occurs to me. In a world where so many feel lost, I know God. I will give love, I will speak peace, all because of the love that's got a hold of me. So wide open, so amazing, it takes my breath away when it occurs to me. In a world where so many feel lost, in a world where so many feel lost, in a world where so many feel lost, I know God. I know God.
Okay, hello. So here we are in this spiritual soup called life together here on a Sunday morning. How about that? And I'm struck this morning with just what a privilege it is. What a privilege it is to be alive, what a privilege it is to be here together, and what a privilege it is to serve. I know that life is a privilege, and sometimes I think of it as something else. Don't you? So I'm going to start by telling you a story about mistaken identity. This is from Tattoos on the Heart, which is a book that we taught here at this center a couple years ago. It's by Father Gregory Boyle, who runs a gang intervention program in Los Angeles called Homeboy Industries. And Father Greg said that in this particular chapter, he said that on Saturday mornings he often goes to the prisons and does mass for the gang members that are in the prison. And so he had a very beautiful morning of doing mass in the prisons, and then he would generally go back to his office at Homeboy Industries, where he had a half hour to look at all of the mail that had accumulated. And after that half hour, he would have to go to his church, where he would do baptisms and weddings and quinceañeras and all kinds of activities like that. But he really looked forward to that half hour that he had to go through his mail, right? You know what that's like when you haven't seen your mail for a while, or your email, and you're just desperate to check it, right? Maybe I'm the only one, I don't know. So anyway, he got back to his office, and he's going through his mail, and he had been there about 10 minutes. He only has a half hour, remember? About 10 minutes, and then somebody knocks on the door, and a woman named Carmen comes in. And this woman named Carmen is a prostitute, and she's a gang member, and she has been known to be very loud and obstreperous and to cause a lot of trouble. But she comes into his office, and she clearly wants to talk to him about something. She says, "I need your help," when she first comes in. But she takes a while to get to the point. She wanders around the office, and she looks at the bookshelves, and she handles some of his items on his desk, and she sits down, and now it's 10 minutes before he has to go, and he's still got a pile of mail that's really calling his attention, and she wanders some more and still won't really get to the point, and now it's 7 minutes and then 5 minutes. And at 5 minutes before he had to leave to do this baptism, wedding, or quinceañera, Carmen looks at the ceiling, and he said that her eyes turned into two liquid pools. And then she looked down and met his gaze, and she said, "I am a disgrace." And Father Greg said, he wrote, "In that moment, my shame met hers." Why was I ashamed? Because I had mistaken her for an interruption. How about that? I have mistaken my life for a burden when it really is a privilege. I have mistaken things that seem to be against me when they really are for my evolution. I have mistaken loss and suffering, thinking that it is something wrong, when really it is something that is a gift to draw us into greater compassion, love, joy, God. So this morning, this talk title is A Blank Check for Unlimited Good. I can never remember what I say on Wednesday I'm going to speak about. I think the blank check for unlimited good is, how do we stop mistaking life for something other than it is? Because life is unlimited good, and sometimes we think it's something else. How do we do that? Well, you got me. Maybe that cell phone person will call again. No. Before I get into how I think one of the ways that we can do that, how we can have that unlimited feeling of good and well-being, even when things are difficult, I want to talk a little bit about the science of mind. And the bullet point on my outline would say, this is why Reverend Bonnie is a bad science of mind minister, okay? I've been told by people in the movement that, and by people who visit other churches, that I teach science of mind a little bit differently than others do. And I've actually had somewhat of a crisis of faith over the past year or so that is slowly resolving at this point, where I even wondered if I should continue in this spiritual teaching, in this pulpit even, because I do see things slightly differently. And it would complicate my life significantly if I no longer believed in the science of mind, because I like it here. I like this pulpit, and I love all of you. But have you ever had that awful feeling that maybe you've picked the wrong religion? Has that ever happened to you? After all these years, it's like, oops. I had lunch with Reverend Dr. Patrick Harbula. I don't know if he's a doctor, I just promoted him, but Reverend Patrick Harbula the other day, who wrote The Magic of the Soul, which is a book that we just taught here at the center. And I was telling him about my dilemma, and he was so funny. He's like, oh, you're not so special. We're all teaching it the way you're talking about it now. So that's great. It's really good to find out that I'm really not unique and special, and that I'm really kind of more fitting in with the way that we are starting to evolve in teaching the science of mind. And I'll tell you, I have a list of things that I feel that I do a little bit differently, but a couple of them for this morning. One is that I am not squeamish about suffering. I don't know about you guys, but when I was being raised up in the science of mind teaching, I started this in my late 20s, early 30s, I remember being told, you never need to suffer. Pain is optional. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. You do not have to have a minute of suffering in your life. You can get all of your lessons from joy. Good luck with that. I do think that sometimes we suffer needlessly over our suffering, that sometimes we make suffering into a false idol, a false god. But I think that there is power in suffering, and if God is truly everywhere, then God is in the suffering too. I wrote a blog piece that I'm going to post this week, given what's been going on in our center, called Suffering is the New Joy. And I have found, orange is the new black, suffering is the new joy. And I have found that suffering draws me into greater depth than I could ever possibly imagine in my complacent egoic state. Father Richard Rohr says that suffering is any time we lose control, any time our ego loses control. And you guys, that happens to me every single day. So if that's the definition of suffering, I say that I am willing to suffer every day, because I always gain when my ego loses control. Suffering is also allowing. It is a willingness to be present with what is. And I am so willing at this point to be present with what is, because when I am present with what is, it brings me great riches and great depth. So I am not squeamish about suffering, and I hope that's okay with y'all, because I like it here, okay? Another thing that I think that I've been told that I do slightly differently with the science of mind teaching is that I am not overly obsessed with the secret and manifesting and using the power of law and my mind to rearrange reality in a way that is pleasant to me. By the same token, if anybody comes to me with any prayer request, I will pray for that prayer request. And how is that not a contradiction? Because behind all requests for prayer is the searching for God, is the yearning for God. And sometimes God uses ridiculous bait to get us to wake up to its magnificent and mighty presence. So I will pray for anything for anybody, but I do truly know that behind all of our yearning, all of our wanting, there really is truly just the desire for God. We long to come home to that beautiful, beautiful homeland that is our inner dwelling, Christ consciousness, Buddha presence, mystic presence, Atman, whatever it is you want to call it. It's all God, and it's in everything, and we draw it forth as we pray. And then the third thing, is the idea that thoughts are things. I've seen people get themselves into trouble with the idea that thoughts are things, saying, I create my entire reality. I create everything that happens to me. When I hear that, sometimes I think that the universe, reality, is kind of around us, like laughing at us with like coffee squirting out of its nose. You know that for many, many years, a whole bunch of people, probably, I don't know how many people there were back then, but millions of people thought the earth was flat. Did our thinking the world was flat make the world flat? No. There is this whole magnificent reality that is so much greater than our knowing. It transcends all of the opposites that we impose upon it. This is good, this is bad, this is living, this is dying. This magnificent reality is that power and that presence that is the living God, that is the wholeness that we seek to reveal in our prayers and in our consciousness and in our spiritual practice. So if thoughts are things, yes, I understand that there is a thought beyond this church. The thought behind this church before it was created was, I know, I'm going to make a Mayan temple for the Baptists. There is a linear connection between thoughts and things. However, we cannot limit the world of creation with our tiny little thoughts unless we want the universe to laugh at us. And it does so well. You know, there's this Anne Lamott story where she talks about those car seats. I don't know if they make them anymore. They're car seats with a fake steering wheel on it. And you put like a 2-year-old in there and you see he's concentrating so hard. And the car is turning and he's concentrating, turning that wheel. And he's like, phew, made that turn okay, thank God. And you get the metaphor, don't you? That we think we're driving the car, but really there's this thing called the universe that's been in place for at least 13.8 billion years that is driving the car. So it leads me to wonder whether or not we are creating reality or whether reality is creating us. Do we mold reality into a shape that pleases us, or do we allow reality to mold us into a shape that pleases it? What I've learned in Meister Eckhart class is that God became man so man could become God. And another way of saying that is love became matter so matter could become love. Isn't that more fun than rearranging your life into pleasing little pieces? Isn't it more fun to say, wow, I am here on this earth so that I can become love, that I can become the purest vessel of spirit that I possibly can, expressing here in all ways, in everything, even the things that are displeasing or unpleasant or suffering or hard for me. I can become the presence of love in everything. That is a source of unlimited good. How do we get there? Our featured book of the month this month is a beautiful book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. And how many of you have read The Untethered Soul? Right? So that's a really good book. We taught it here a little over a year ago, I guess. And Michael Singer is a spiritual teacher. He wrote this great book called The Untethered Soul, and then he wrote this other one called The Surrender Experiment, which is kind of how he got to be where he was. And as a young man in his 20s, he decided that he was going to start surrendering to everything, to just start saying yes, or more realistically, to start notice the voice of judgment and the voice of opinion in his head and the voice of preference, and to think that maybe the universe knew what it was doing, and that he was being presented with certain things to say yes to them, to flow with them, to participate with them in a unique and wonderful way. I'm going to read you a quote from the book that says what the essence of the book is about and what the essence of this message is about. Life rarely unfolds exactly as we want it to. And if we stop and think about it, that makes perfect sense. The scope of life is universal, and the fact that we are not actually in control of life's events should be self-evident. The universe has been around for 13.8 billion years, and the processes that determine the flow of life around us did not begin when we were born, nor will they end when we die. What manifests in front of us at any given moment is actually something truly extraordinary. It is the end result of all the forces that have been interacting for billions of years. We are not responsible for even the tiniest fraction of what is manifesting around us. Nonetheless, we walk around constantly trying to control and determine what will happen in our lives. No wonder there's so much tension, anxiety, and fear. Each of us actually believes that things should be the way we want them. And so the gist of this book is about how it's autobiographical, and it's how he just practiced the art of surrender. And he surrendered to many things, and he had many wonderful things happen to him. I'm only about halfway through, and I think some other things fall apart in his life, but by treating it all through surrender, he was opened up to a greater realization and a greater vision of reality than he would have known than he would have experienced had he been in a wrestling match with reality all of the time. Surrender led him to a greater place, and I think surrender can lead us to a greater place. Now, sometimes when I say surrender, people think that I'm talking about being passive and giving up. You know, if Michael Singer had a rattlesnake that was coiled and his daughter was walking towards the rattlesnake, would he intervene or would he just surrender? No, he would cooperate with the law of the snake, knowing that a coiled rattlesnake that is shaking his rattle is giving a warning, so he would take his daughter and pull her out of the way. The same thing is true when we surrender. It's not that we're passive. It's just that we have a different way of interacting with reality that does not involve slapping reality and trying to wrestle it into submission. It's just a different way of being where we are more open to receive the grace that is inherent and the unlimited good that is inherent in every single moment. I have an example of how this unfolded in my life this past week, where I really had to surrender because something really bad was happening in my life. This story, by the way, does have a happy ending. My dog is okay. But earlier this week, I took my younger dog, Saraswati, she's only 2 years old, and she's just young, and she's like a gazelle, and she's so filled with energy and so filled with life. And we went up on a hike, and I came back, she started throwing up. I'm like, that's okay, dogs throw up, it's okay. I went out, I was going to go to Thousand Oaks to meet someone, and then I was in my car, and I got a phone call from my husband, Hugh, who said, I'm taking Sarah to the vet immediately. She can't walk. She can't get off the couch. She's throwing up. She's having severe neurological changes. And so I did a U-turn on the 118 and hightailed it back to meet them at the vet. And when I got there, the vet had this look on his face like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do, because she was presenting symptoms in an atypical manner. Now that journey after the U-turn on the 118 and driving down the 118 back to Wells Road where my vet practices, that journey was an opportunity to surrender, because I certainly wanted to fight and slap reality and tell reality how it needed to be, how it needed to show up, how it needed to show up for my sweet dog that I've only had for 2 years that I love so much. And I was telling reality, I was, starting. How many of you, when you're really desperate, you revert to the prayers of your childhood, right? Where you beg God, right? I was begging God to save my dog. And then I was like, well, I'm a Science of Mind minister. I should know better. I should pray the 5 steps, I should pray the 5 steps. So I started doing that. I was like, I'm not praying those 5 steps. And then I got the idea that maybe this was about surrender. Maybe this was about trusting that something greater was at play, that whatever the outcome, that I could trust that 13.8 billion years that converged to make this moment happen in the life of my life and in the life of my dog's life, respecting her process as well. And so I started praying and I started surrendering, and what always happens to me when I surrender in the face of crisis is that I suddenly move to this place where I recognize that I am on a pilgrimage. And that pilgrimage is to express love in every single step of the way. And that I would show up in that vet's office and be exactly who my dog needed me to be. And I would be who love needed me to be. And it took that situation for me to reawaken and remember that thing that I always forget, that we are here to be the expression of love. Now, before you think that I'm all holy, sometimes it's easier with the big stuff. Let's talk about, okay, so I'm all surrendered about, the demise or the possible demise of my sweet dog, but let's talk about that fertilizer truck that was in front of me going 20 miles an hour. Are there any children in the congregation? Oh, someone's pointing at their significant. Well, let's just say that I was saying some colorful language involving the word mother and trucker. And then I thought, well, you know what? I can surrender to that too. I can surrender to my own irkenness and recognize that that's part of God too, but I can also surrender to this truck and understand that I am getting where I need to go in God's perfect time. That maybe that truck filled with fertilizer going 20 miles an hour that I was railing against was like anything else in life. It was there to put me in the right place at times so that reality could converge and allow what was supposed to happen Got to the vet. My vet didn't know what to do. He said, take her to the emergency room. They're going to have 10 brains there. They'll figure out what's wrong with her. I drove down the freeway, the 101, missed the exit, started cursing myself because I missed the exit, and then said, no, God's time is perfect. God's time is perfect. And by the time I got to the vet, she was starting to act like herself again. And I took her out of the car, and she pulled on the leash like a robust Vizsla pointer dog does. And I got her into the vet. They examined her. They said, we don't know what's wrong with her, but I think she's going to be okay. $500 later. But it was all fine. And later on, when we were at home, I took her little butterscotch face in my hands, and I kissed her on her head and her nose, and I just smelled her and just loved her up. And I said to her, Saraswati, I knew everything was going to be okay. Then I said to my husband, without moving my lips, so the dog wouldn't hear, of course, I have a different definition of what okay is these days. And you know what? I do have a different definition of what okay is these days. Because really, it's all God. It's all God. Even the things that cause us pain, even the things that cause us to suffer, even the things that we are unable to let go of, even our clinging, even our attachment, even our craziness, all of it is God expressing. All of it is here to draw us into deeper relationship with the One, with that love that became us so that we could become love. Everything exists for our unfolding. Everything is unlimited good. But the only thing is that if we want to receive and appreciate and experience that beautiful good that is there for us, it's up to us to participate in a way that calls that forth. And so we surrender, and we pray, and we trust God, and we know that if we are fighting the present moment, we are fighting the entire universe. We don't want to fight the entire universe. Guess who's going to win that one, right? Right? So that's all I have to say, really. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. You know me better by now. You know I'm never done when I say that. It's just... Really, the only thing I have left to say is just to invite you to take these words and to make them your own. Whether you're going through something challenging, like many of our church members have been this year. This has been such a year of letting go and transition and changes, and that can be challenging for our human selves. But perhaps, just perhaps, you can take these words with whatever is going on in your life and recognize, just like that story about Father Greg and Carmen, that life is showing up a certain way and you are mistaking it as something that is against you, when really it is for you. It is for your awakening, and it is for you to expand into that being of greater love that you already are. So let's do that now. Welcome home, and let us pray. So right here and right now, I center into this awareness of the power and the presence of the living God that is all things, that is love, that became matter, that became all of us. Right here and right now, I call forth my awareness of that presence and name it good because it is good. I align myself with the truth and the power and the glory of this beautiful, beautiful presence that we cannot name, but we call God, we call Spirit, we call higher power, we call love. And as I align myself with it, I know that everyone is aligned with it, for there is truly only one of us here, and our name is love, our name is Spirit. I connect to that power and that presence right here and right now and call it my own and call it my life, speaking in the first person, knowing that it is true for each and every one of us that sits here in this sanctuary today, and each and every person that we hold so tenderly in our hearts. And so for anyone who is struggling or suffering, I simply trust that Spirit is there too. That Spirit is revealing wholeness. That Spirit is showing itself as love, and that the suffering of ourselves or the suffering of others is simply a pilgrimage to move into greater compassion. The word compassion meaning to suffer with. And so we move into that compassion and see that we are on this pilgrimage of love in all things. Our vision is changed. Our eyes are changed. We see the world differently. We see living and dying differently. We see suffering and joy differently. We see joy and sorrow differently. We recognize that it is all part of this unbroken wholeness that is life, that is God. And we are here to cooperate with that, to participate with it, to live it fully, and to allow it to come out and play in us. And so I am grateful, so grateful for this spiritual truth, so grateful for this teaching and for all teachings everywhere. I am grateful for the spiritual enjoyment and work and pleasure that we have enjoyed here together this morning, knowing that it touches our hearts, and as our hearts are transformed, then we transform the world that is perfect. And that we wrap our mind around that paradox without having to really even understand it, and just trust that God is playing through us and that life is so good, and that we recognize that goodness when we are grateful. So I am. I bless this spiritual center and every single person in it. I bless all paths to God, churches, temples, mosques, ashrams, synagogues. I bless fundamentalists and atheists, knowing that everyone is a blessing in their own unique and wonderful way. And with a heart so filled with blessedness and so filled with expanded love, I release these words. I let them go. I surrender. And together we say, and so it is. I am so blessed. Please repeat after me. I am held in Spirit's holiness.
I am held in Spirit's holiness.
Divinely guided by wisdom, courage, and love.
Divinely guided by wisdom, courage, and love.
I am always connected. I see God in everything. I create joy on earth. As I share my blessings. Thank you for my life. And so it is.